I think we can all agree that social media is becoming to be extremely centralized to the point where it's actually getting a little bit scary. And honestly, as a creator, you don't really know if you're going to wake up tomorrow and have your account, suspended, banned, or have a strike. So I think it's very important. And one of the most obvious use cases for crypto is then moving away from this centralized architecture, especially in how strong and prevalent social media has become today, moving into a decentralized alternative. Hence, we come to the project I will be reviewing for you all today called CyberConnect. Now, this was actually mentioned by many of you, okay? I had many comments saying, Kyron, you need to cover more decentralized social projects. And while I have mentioned one or two here and there, on the slide, cover things, I haven't really dove into a decentralized social platform. And it just turns out that CyberConnect actually was the one that you guys were pretty much preaching to me the most. And actually, coincidentally enough, its ICO is tomorrow, at least it's IDO, it's actual launch, okay? So let's get into this a little bit more today. Now, what I've done, of course, is broken this down on my spreadsheet. Like I typically do with these reviews, I want to give you guys all the information in a nice, easy to digest format. So I want to say one thing, if I dove into this video to the whole length and gave you all the information this spreadsheet has to offer, I would literally be here for about 25 minutes, and you don't want that. I don't want that. No one wants that, okay? So I'm going to give you this sheet for free, but only for 1 month, all right? So please go ahead, first link down below, access the sheet, read through it, and kind of construct your own opinions on things. And of course, go ahead and do your own research as well. So again, in my opinion, CyberConnect is changing the decentralized social game, and they have been for a few years now. And so again, I've been told to review this since I haven't covered any decentralized social particularly. And on top of that, of course, ICO altcoins, I decided now was the right time. Thanks to everyone for recommending this project. Now, decentralized social media is going to be, in my opinion, very necessary moving into what we call the information age, or the next step in humanity's evolution. We've had multiple different sort of periods in humanity. We go through these different phases. And as mentioned in one of my favorite books, The Sovereign Individual, this information age is actually happening right now, and the pivot is going to be still going on. And I think definitely, as I mentioned in the introduction of the video, that social media is a big stepping stone for this. And so having a decentralized social platform is extremely important. Now, again, as we've seen multiple times, social media in its centralized form has an almost dictatorship-esque result, as elections have been botched, censorship does occur over opposing opinions, and also violence can be encouraged. The list just goes on, and I think you guys that have ever used social platforms know what I'm talking about here. So in this video, we're going to break down CyberConnect and see what this altcoin actually is and how it's solving the issue, what the tokenomics are, how the ecosystem and metrics kind of play into how it is a promising project, and the concerns I actually do have with the project as well, so you're aware. Now, I want to say for you guys recommending the project to me, you must remember something very important. This is for any project out there, of course. Just like I always use the analogy with Warren Buffett. He did once say that you should never invest in anything you don't understand. It's my job as someone who you can rely on or partly rely on for bringing the 100% truth. Yeah, I'm going to obviously dive into some of these concerns as well. But first, what is CyberConnect? Now, of course, guys, if I went through this in detail, it's going to be a long video, so I'm going to try to condense it to the absolute most important information, okay? So CyberConnect is a Web3 social network that launched way back in 2021, enabling developers to create social applications to empower users to own their own digital identity, content, connections, and interactions. Creators, users, and also companies, organizations themselves, okay? So CyberConnect has 3 core components to it: the Cypher account, the Cypher graph, and also the Cyber network, okay? So the Cypher account probably is the most important thing, because this is going to pretty much be everyone's sort of main go-to use case, at least for the network, right? So Cypher account is much more than just a universal username, okay? It's actually a central self-sovereign digital identity account accessible on all the applications, okay? So for the most part, CyberConnect is essentially like the base framework for applications to be able to build on top of it. For any developers, they might have a cool idea. They can build an application, a decentralized social-based application on top of it. And then, of course, as users, we can interact with all these different applications through our Cypher account itself. And the Cypher account comprises of 4 main things: authentication and authorization, 2, which is the ERC 433 standard, or gasless payments, okay? So we obviously know the problem with decentralized social platforms is that lots of gas and high gas fees. Well, this is obviously going to go ahead and help that. Cypher ID, which represents your unique ID/handle, which is actually an NFT that can be altered and then also resold. So it can be changed, which is quite interesting, and also offers organization accounts with pretty much customizable access and controls, multi-sig options, and so on and so forth, which is pretty cool. Also, CyberGraph, so it's a censorship-resistant database built on multi-chain EVM smart contracts to record users' content and social connections. More or less, this is pretty much the meat and potatoes. This is like the main part of CyberConnect, okay? So it offers things like content, so every user can be a creator and monetize their content via tokenization, what's called WEST or Web3 status token, which is an NFT that signals a user's involvement in the community, helping find loyal and engaging supporters. You can enable subscription, so I can charge you guys a subscription for viewing bits and pieces of different type of content, and also middleware. This is quite interesting, right? So gated communities can be formed. For example, I might have a no BS crypto NFT, and for you guys to watch not all of my content, but set pieces of content like you can with Patreon, for example, you have to obviously purchase the NFT, like a gated community, okay, which is pretty awesome. And a whole heap more, of course, right? And number 3 is CyberNetwork. So CyberNetwork is designed to make using a social network in Web3 viable by reducing costs associated with the immutable nature of blockchain technology. More or less, what's this got to do with sort of CyberConnect is the fact that, as I mentioned moments before, the main issue with these social networks is essentially that they're extremely expensive to use, and obviously doing tweets or doing messages or DMs, this all has to go through the blockchain, which is very cumbersome, okay, and very expensive. So this will obviously help them move over this hurdle, essentially, right? And the funny thing is, they're upgrading this in their V3, which is happening right now. And in V2, just to put some perspective on this number, $2 million was paid in gas fees by all 1.3 million users. Insane. So when they enable this, it'll pretty much reduce that down to a very, very low amount, okay? Now, this tackles 3 main things amongst the sort of line of who uses social applications, essentially. So developers can easily build innovative Web3 social applications without worrying about the infrastructure, cold start problems, or barriers to entry. Of course, creators, and as I mentioned before, anyone can become a creator. So create content which you own, control the distribution and monetization so that you can grow your audience in a fairer, more direct and decentralized environment. So again, we're cutting out the middleman here. So we're making more money. Anyone can go ahead and be a creator, and you can control that any way you would like, which is super powerful in my opinion, and also users, so you can easily interact with Web3 by discovering content, communities, social activities while owning your digital identity, connections, and interactions. All your data that would otherwise go to these big centralized players and they would store that and sell it, you own yourself. It's stored on Arweave. It's stored locally on these networks, because ultimately what CyberConnect is a series of smart contracts on different networks, and there's about 4 active right now, 2 more coming very, very soon. And so essentially what it allows you to do is store that data wherever you need to. Obviously Arweave is quite cheap, kind of like in an IPFS way. And this is what's really powerful about it. You own your data. No one else can take it away from you. And for creators, it means more money, essentially, right? So the existing centralized platforms are kind of doing something like this. I tried to visualize it as best as I could, right? So data flows in, and what happens? Well, it's being scanned, okay, by the centralized body here, and essentially it's compromised, right? So it all comes out as compromised, okay? And so collect user data to sell to third parties and or create ulterior narratives, plus incentivize censorship. Over here for CyberConnect, it's decentralized, okay? So there's no filter. It's just information comes in, information goes out however way you want it to be. Completely free flow of data, untouched, untracked, and non-custodial data that can be used in any way the user wants. You can take the data as an end user and then pretty much port it over to any ecosystem. Again, it's a series of smart contracts on multiple different networks, and therefore you're going to have different social applications. We'll check the ecosystem in just a second here, spawn on a particular sort of like, let's say BNB, for example, that can then obviously be interacted with on other networks if you wish as well. That's the true power of it. So in my opinion, I think this could be one of the very first use cases for crypto alongside GameFi. We've had a massive GameFi spike in the 2021 bull market. However, there does need to be a large incentive, either financial or technical advantage, to onboard the masses. Now, this is my problem we'll get to in a minute with these sort of decentralized social platforms, okay? So I want you guys to think of it like this. What made you decide to start using TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever? What made you do that? Well, it's because of network effects, whether you know it or not. Now, when your friends, family, or more importantly, in my opinion, right, favorite social media influencers start using a platform, often sometimes has to be exclusively, you want to join because you want to absorb that content, okay? And so the flywheel begins, right? So influencer, family, whatever friend joins a network, they consume, create content that's entertaining and addictive. Richer content is then created and links are shared, okay? Because we're developing the ecosystem essentially here. revenue model then begins to build, which incentivizes more people to come on and want to use. Essentially, it's a flywheel that creates a network effect, okay? A network effect is pretty much how I, as person 10,347, will benefit you being person 1 to join the network, and you can benefit me, again, creating richer content, spreading the love and message, creating a deeper revenue stream. And this is essentially what you need to kind of focus on to bootstrap the network, okay? And to kickstart this flywheel, CyberConnect uses developers with decentralized social applications to create these social applications, which again kickstarts that flywheel before even this step over here. So pretty much what CyberConnect does is say, hey devs, we'll give you all the necessary tools, you create these amazing platforms, and then we'll push it out to more people essentially, right? So it's basically meta. So CyberConnect is basically meta to WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook, okay? It's the sort of overarching sort of umbrella, if you will. So for example, CyberConnect down here, you have a platform like Link, Favor, Read On, and so on and so forth. There is a lot more applications we'll touch on in just a second that leverage it. Essentially, this hopefully makes a bit of sense. And of course, these can be supported and used on different networks. Again, these are also smart contracts interacting with the main smart contract network, if you will. Now, tokenomics. What are the tokenomics of CyberConnect? Well, the token, as I mentioned before, actually isn't out just yet, but we'll touch on why in a second. We'll also look at distribution and vesting. So the Cypher token will be used for pretty traditional things, right? Governance token, payments as well. So you can actually use the Cyber token itself for, of course, purchasing Cyber ID. Now, Cyber ID is essentially a way that you can pretty much collect and own your own unique ID. For example, it might be like Chiron.cyber, for example, right? It's super important in my opinion, because this is essentially what's going to be the gateway to the ecosystem, what you have to essentially have. You don't have to have it. You can decide to pay for it or not use it at all. I think most people are going to want to use this. Therefore, it's going to create some token demand and also gas. So those typical things as well. Distribution and vesting. So there is a max supply, which is fixed at 100 million tokens. So nice and low. No circulating supply right now because it actually isn't out. Deflationary, no mechanism, but of course this can always be added in later on if they obviously decided to. Launch status. So they had its ICO on CoinList back in May this year, May 18th this year, where they raised a fair bit of money, but their main funding rounds came from 2 venture capitalist rounds, raising over $25 million with some absolutely massive players. Multi-Coin Capital, IOSG, these guys are absolutely huge. Haas is huge. These are both S-tier based venture capital funds, and so does American Brands, and we also have Binance Labs. Binance Labs used to be an S tier for me. Now I've honestly downgraded it to probably an A tier, but still very, very, very big names. Obviously there was more, but these are the ones I decided to mention. So that gives me naturally a little bit more confidence as well. And if we take a look at the token distribution, I've given it pretty much all green ticks all around because nothing here screams bad to me. We've got a nice distribution, and of course we've got some high distributions here to, like, for example, a private sale, like what I call third parties, but these are locked up for 12 months. And then from there, linear release 3 years after, okay? They linear release in quarterly 3 years after, okay? So it only happens 4 years for the last 3 years after that, okay? So in my opinion, nothing to scoff at here, nothing to look at and kind of, grade them down, if you will. And I will mention, I've underlined in red here, the fact that a lot of these sort of distributions or allocations to these entities are unlocked over a long period. Look, 3 years, 5 years over here, 4 years, 4 years, 3 years, 3 years. This is typically after the initial unlock as well, guys. So yeah, in my opinion, nothing bad here. Nice and long. The main thing we're looking for is at least for it to push away from out of the 2025 bull run. Anything past that, I don't care what happens. As long as it obviously occurs within the next bear market, that is fine in my opinion. Now, the token is set to launch, for those who are wondering, on the 15th of August this year. So that's literally in a day. So keep that in mind. Now, while we do have a description of the vesting schedule and unlocks, I couldn't find a dedicated vesting graph. So keep that in mind. Not that it's a big deal. It doesn't really matter at all. A lot of large projects don't even have this, but I just couldn't visualize to you guys when these massive cliffs happen. Essentially, we're looking for 2025. A lot of the distribution will be out by then, but initially, at least right now, we should be quite fine, okay? Now, if you are someone who wants to obviously go ahead and purchase Cypher, one unique thing I found when doing the research was that you can actually farm Cyber right now on the Binance Launchpad, okay? So if you get BNB tokens, you can stake those BNB tokens and receive Cyber tokens back. Now, obviously, the token isn't out yet, and this only is available for the next 17.5 days. But if you're someone who wants free cyber tokens for just staking your BNB, rather than receiving BNB back in a traditional sense, you can of course farm the cyber token. It's just free cyber tokens, okay? So again, 17 days or more or less left before that ends. I just thought I would throw that in there for all of you who are interested. Now, the ecosystem. So for the type of network and how relatively new CyberConnect is, again, it hasn't even actually released its public token yet, but it is a couple of years old. I am quite impressed with the number of dapps on the network. Now, they claim 50 plus, but mentioned on the ecosystem page here, we only have 40. But I want to say, obviously, this does well, they're at least including dapps that are under construction right now. Typically, a lot of projects do that. Nothing to be too concerned about, obviously. But the main one I want to mention to you is this one. So Link 3. Okay, now Link 3 is CyberConnect's flagship Web3 social network platform. If you go have a look at Link 3, I might leave the link in the description for it. Actually, it's quite dense, and I'm going to show you in a second how many large projects are actually on this social platform already. It's actually quite insane when I was doing my research. Now, some notable others, we have Favor, Read-On, Dopamine, Oasis, and Mochaverse. Mochaverse actually is an Animoca brand's membership NFT collection. Now, I'm not going to go into those. You guys can obviously read that if you want to do some deeper research. Now, some metrics. Keep in mind, CyberConnect has been around since 2021, meaning it's built a solid framework beneath it. As I said, 50 applications, 304,000 total cyber accounts, 134,000 cyber accounts creating content, so content creators, essentially. Total transactions, quite impressive. Connected networks, so right now we have Polygon, Linear, Optimism, Base, and coming soon within the next month or two, we have Arbitrum and BNB, which will just allow more smart contracts and more applications to be built on more diverse networks. 400,000 monthly active users, which is huge. 43 users paying for those IDs I mentioned before. 1.9 million content bits of created, and 2,600 verified organizations using Link 3. Verified organizations. SUI, BNB, CyberConnect, obviously, Link 3, Manta, Parsec, Layer 0, it just went on from there, okay? There's, like I said, 2,600 of them, and you can see how many followers they actually have already, meaning that these are actual people following these networks. Quite impressive, guys. I suggest you check it out. Nevertheless, overall, these metrics are quite good in my opinion. And now, it is time for my overall opinion and my individual concern I have with the project. So it comes down to 2025 explosive power. So Cypher has a lot of things going for it. Yes, let's all agree on that. But the proposed vision might take a long time to really develop. Now, I want to say by far, CyberConnect is one of the very best, if not the best, as far as I've seen so far, Web3 social project. Now, we've got some other ones like DeSo, Decentralized Social. In my opinion, this is better, in my personal opinion, okay? It is not the project itself that I have a concern with, it's the narrative it's actually in. So let me clarify, I don't have a real big concern with what these guys are doing thus far. I have a concern with the narrative, and the narrative being how explosive, how much returns this can generate for 2025. So this is my narrative list that I've created for 2025. And obviously we have how much demand I think will come in out of 10. And as you can see here, I honestly do think, obviously it's the decentralized social narrative here, which is a 5 out of 10. But it also hits two sort of sub-narratives as well, and that's the digital ID and NFT. So overall, I mean, we're all hitting basically the ones that I don't think will have the most explosive potential, at least versus the ones that will, in my opinion, okay? Now, this is subjective, and it will most likely change. This could be a different story in 6 months' time. This is my forecast. Again, subjective, it's my personal opinion, and I'm only saying this because, again, nothing is inherently wrong with the project, at least from what I found. But these sort of narratives, I don't think are going to be as crazy explosive as what we might find the ones in green are. And so with that said, I want to explain why. So in my opinion, it's simply because decentralized social platforms suffer from the extremely slow, expensive, and complicated UX and UI that comes with using decentralized technology, right? And while CyberConnect is working diligently to resolve these issues, hence their 3 pillars I mentioned at the start of the video, I think it is still somewhat a sticking point. Now, my other major concern is with the network effect of social platforms, okay? So what I've essentially, just to recap here, what I've essentially said is the fact that because CyberConnect is a decentralized social platform itself, there is inherent problems with it. One big thing which they actually are working on improving right now is the UX and UI of such platforms. And yes, I did mention they are looking to upgrade and improve this They're actually migrating to a new website right now from what I could see before. And essentially, guys, I want to say, like, if you go ahead and use like link 3, for example, while it is actually pretty intuitive, I do think there is a long way to go here for it to actually be a viable product. And of course, that also comes along with high gas fees, so on and so forth. Nowadays, social media is also monopolized, so it's impossible to break away from the norm due to lack of engagements for creators and content for users. Now, I believe the only way decentralized social networks will begin to thrive is if platforms like Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook begin to constrict their end users so much so that we have no choice but to change platforms or find a distributed, decentralized alternative. Now, my issue is, if you have a look at Twitch and how extremely toxic that environment is, and yet so many creators stay because it's still the #1 streaming platform, obviously where the creators are is where everything is going to be, aka the viewers. Now, this is kind of my issue, right? It's like these platforms like YouTube and so on and so forth can constrict and constrict and constrict, but if that is where the #1 amount of, the creators essentially are, well, that's where the #1 amount of viewers are going to be, essentially, okay? And so this will only really become a problem, I believe, as things get to a point where no one can literally handle it anymore, okay? And so that is where I think these platforms will come in handy, or at least until we find like creators, for example, on Twitter might go, okay, I am only going to be on X platform, obviously on CyberConnect. In this case, it's link 3, for example, okay? So that's kind of the environment I'm talking about here. Now, as I mentioned before, of course, we have the situation where CyberConnect is looking to solve these issues with the upgrade to V3. It's going through right now. V2, it even said itself on some of its blogs, right? There are some inherent issues, most notably those gas issues. And so it's a really, really good thing to see this project is looking to, move past or at least hurdle those barriers. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to here. That's one thing I think is going to be a really, really good sort of like future projection for the, I guess you could say, prosperity of the network. But this is still an issue. Until it is resolved, it's going to be an issue, right? CyberConnect is in a great position to pick up the pieces from an event that may cause a sudden drop-off in creators from one or more of these centralized giants. So again, this pretty much means if there was anything that was to happen in the current situation, YouTube, Facebook, so on, I do believe CyberConnect might actually be one of those networks that will be able to onboard these users, okay? Because we've seen it for the last 2 years perform extremely well. 300,000, 400,000 monthly users ain't no joke, okay? So all in all, and in complete fairness, a project like Cypher can absorb most of the demand in the narrative if it's leaps and bounds ahead of its competition. For example, we can look at Chainlink and what that's done with Oracle. So what I'm saying over here is, while it might not be in the best narratives, the most explosive narratives, that don't mean money is not going to flow into the narrative. And of course, CyberConnect hasn't really had its public token ever, okay? So what this means is, when it's comparing itself to existing solutions, I'm not going to name names, of course, you guys know which ones I'm probably talking about here. If it is leaps and bounds ahead, it's going to absorb that demand. Simple as that. And we'll still definitely have a very explosive bull run. As I said, this is subject to change depending on the times. All right. So guys, with that being said, thank you so much. The video has gone on for probably way too long than what I initially thought it was going to be, but I hope you have enjoyed the deep breakdown I have done here on CyberConnect. And for all of you that have recommended the project to me over the time, I want to say a big thank you. It is actually on my radar, and I appreciate you for that. Now, with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching this video right to the very end. If you have enjoyed, drop a like, stay tuned, and subscribe for daily content I post 2 times a day. Take good care, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.